And I had two really hard areas back to back, and I spent a long time in those areas. And I guess it was kind of, I guess the area right before my last area was definitely the hardest. I think there was a street nearby called Mount Vernon, which is where George Washington is, and I nicknamed for me that area was kind of my Valley Forge. It was the most difficult area for me spiritually and mentally. And I guess having those experiences, and then I guess the first thing that happened was we got some new missionaries, one of which that kind of struggled in their mission in the same ways that I had been struggling the months previously. And so I think that was kind of the immediate payoff of those struggles, was when someone else was having them, then I was able to kind of, take them by the hand and lead them through it. And that kind of helped the both of us get through it. And then after that hard area was my favorite area, which was also my last area in the mission. And it was just an area where everything went right all the time, and just one of those areas. And I guess thinking back on those hard times when they were pretty much over for me in my mission, and there was actually two missionaries in my district that started going through the same thing that I'd been going through, so I was able to talk with them a little bit as well. And I remember I read the talk by Dieter F. Uchtdorf, things like "You're Happily Ever After" or something like that. I think he gave it to young women, actually. When he talks about how fairy tales always have, usually start with a happy beginning, and then things just get terrible, and then things get better than ever at the end of it. And, it's kind of that struggle that makes us associate with the fairy tales. And so I thought, well, I'm not into fairy tales. That's not exactly the thing as a 20-year-old male or 21-year-old male that I was into. And so I started kind of teaching it to missionaries in comic book sense. And I said, basically, in your mission, you're either going to be a Superman or a Batman. And sometimes you're Superman, and you're just stopping robberies just by being there. You are totally in your element, and you are totally just wiping out evil everywhere, not even breaking a sweat, and you're just Superman, and everything's awesome. And then sometimes you're Batman, and you're only human. And a lot of times, terrible things are happening. You can't stop it from happening, and you're just doing the best that you can and just hoping that you're making a difference somehow. And that's what I kind of told missionaries. And I said, but honestly, I'm not a big Superman fan for that reason. Everything for Superman is so easy that when you read a Superman story, you're just bored. You're like, okay, blah, blah, blah. He can punch through a brick wall. What makes this guy's story interesting compared to Batman, who has to work for everything, that takes hits and they hurt him. And so I talked about that with him, and I was like, as a missionary, the times when I was a Batman, when I felt like I wasn't really making a difference and I was just doing the best that I could with what I had, were the times that I feel like I was actually closest to God. For that reason of I was just, scraping along. My testimony was being tried in different ways all the time, and I was winning. I was still getting through it, and sometimes, if I was just standing still, I wasn't even progressing forward. If I could just take the blows, take the disappointments, and, just take it, then those were the times that I felt like I was growing the most. And I think, it applies to life. If you look back at your life, and everything went perfectly, you must have had the most boring life. You wouldn't want to rewatch your life. You're like, nothing happened. But I think when you rewatch your life, the moments that you'll be most interested in watching are those moments where you just feel like you're at the end of your rope and you don't know what to do. All you know is that, you have to try. And so I imagine that every missionary's had the same thing. I imagine every missionary, like to look back on their Superman moments when they baptized, when they, managed to convince someone that their doctrines were incorrect, all the victories that we consider as missionaries. But my mission would not have been complete, and it definitely wouldn't have been nearly as good if I didn't think about my lowest points and how those shaped me into being the better person, and how they open that door a little bit to understand what other people go through, and to understand maybe a little bit what Christ went through, how alone he felt when he was on the cross, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and understanding why that had to happen, and how we, as people that are trying to follow him, I think Jeffrey Harlan said, have to maybe take a few steps towards Gethsemane in order to really win this life, to really come out victoriously.